Well, good morning. Who did I miss in the pre-party? Had my own pre-party with Angel P. We've been on the phone. Good morning, Diva. Connie, what's up, girl? KK made it in, our favorite artist. Misty Doo. Hello, love one another. TCB. She made a thumbnail for the later show today. Yes, that's right. We have two S's today. We have Susan this morning. And then at 12:30 my time, old Sawa Boone is back in court. My goodness. Tana, where you been, girl? Where have you been? There's DT Driver, Poppy Red Mustang. I love that name. I love Mustangs. I love red. And I've tried to grow poppies. I can't tell you how many times. They just don't work for me. They don't. Morning Retro. Hello, Kalaya Hope. Well, and also what a way to start the day. Look at this. One of my very, very best friends, Rexy 55, member for 25 months. Wow. Talk about time flying. And I hate to say it, but when you're having fun, and let's face it, nothing that we talk about on this channel is fun. But somehow we make it enjoyable amongst friends. Speaking of friends, here we go. Angel P, she goes, here's to 32 more. Angel P wants to whip my ass. I can't tell anybody, though. I can't tell anybody. She's got a birthday coming up. Yes, she does. So I told her gift is on the way. And she goes, well, you didn't have to go do that. I said, I don't listen to you and you don't listen to me. So in the spirit of good friends and talking true crime every day with each other, let's welcome our neighbors. Howdy, howdy. Look at that, True Crime Beat member for 22 months. Wow. Wow. Love this community. I love it too. Love our friends, love our family. Because you guys are more family to me than my own family. But that would be a show I would have to do on the other channel, okay? I'm related to a bunch of Uncle Eddies, if you know what I mean. Missing with Manda. Thank you for everything you do, sister. I've been meaning to get a hold of you. I was going to talk to you about some stuff. Nothing bad, just catching up. Good morning, Jane's Addiction. Man, feeling the love. Well, I tell you who I hope isn't going to feel the love come November, and that is Susan Smith. She is up for parole. Now, everything I have been hearing, and you know I believe everything I hear on the internet, my friends, everything, is that her violations in jail are not going to jeopardize her parole. Now then, we have talked about her several times on this channel. Several times. And after all of these years, what she did to her sons, the state, the country, the community, everybody involved, almost started a race riot. She almost did. The sting never goes away. It doesn't. She is in a class with I hate to use the word class, with a few other pieces of shit. Horrifying. Horrifying. True Crime Beat, thank you. She said Boone is at 1:30 Eastern time. 12:30 my time. We will be streaming it here. Tell your friends. Share to your socials. By the way, is everybody's notifications working? Because I'm getting a lot of people saying, I thought I was subscribed, but I'm not getting my notifications. Then I have some people that go, now hold on, how come I have to be a subscriber to be able to chat in there? The only reason I do the subscribers only is because there's obviously an issue with YouTube when someone who has been in this channel for, over 3 years goes, now why am I no longer subscribed? So it's just a friendly reminder to double check. I'm telling you, it's not anything personal, but woo-wee, some people take shit real personal if you haven't noticed. Not going to get off on that, though. All right, somebody who has every right to take things personal is David Smith. Again, Susan is up for parole in about, let's see, what's today? September 19th? About 6 weeks. Yep, about 6 weeks. Okay. She has the nerve to be trying to get David Smith, her ex, father of her sons, man that totally believed she was carjacked and some random black man took her car with the children in it. He believed her. He was on TV. He was advocating for her. He was crying, bring my boys back, bring my boys back, bring my boys back. And she just sat right there. Me and Daddy love you. Me and Daddy love you. We just can't believe this happened. When she knew the whole time her sons were in the bottom of the lake. Let's go back a little ways and we're going to get to the latest.
We do regret the audio problem. They will try to get back to Myra as soon as we can. David Smith drew a global fame he never wanted when his estranged wife, Susan, drowned their children, Michael and Alex, in Union County in 1994. The story, as many of you recall, captured the heart of the world. Today marked a first for David Smith as he spoke to first responders who were called in when a child is in danger. News Force Angela Rodriguez is live and local from our Greenville newsroom. And Angela, so many of us remember the exact moment we heard about the murders of those boys.
Michael, 15 years later, even Oprah.
Okay. Obviously, it's been longer than 15 years. This is what do we call it? What do the cool people say? Besides deep dive. This comes out of the time capsule. Okay? Time capsule. It's actually been, well, she's up for parole after 30 years from her conviction.
Oprah wants to know more. She was recently turned down for a jailhouse interview with Susan Smith. It's a life-changing pain David Smith has to live with every day.
This is one thing I will give Susan Smith some credit for. I wouldn't talk to Oprah's ass either. No, I wouldn't.
He agreed to dig up the past today to help investigators.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder.
The murders of young Michael and Alex Smith will never be forgotten.
Look at those babies. Look at those babies. How could she? How could she? For grocery store man, that flat out said on the stand, it had nothing to do with the boys. I didn't want you.
Forgotten in the upstate. In 1994, their mother lied to the country, saying her car was stolen with the boys still inside. The frantic search ended when investigators proved the grieving mother was really the one to blame. It's a painful story investigators are still trying to learn from more than 15 years later. For the first time, though, their teacher is the man who lived through it all, the boy's father, David Smith.
Please, as law enforcement, don't shy away. Don't feel intimidated by the parents and hinder, the investigation. Please ask those important questions.
Smith.
This is so important that he said this. Okay? This is so important. And listen, we can all learn, okay? Just because somebody is wrong one day doesn't mean they can't learn. It doesn't make them a horrible person. David Smith was extremely pissed that investigators kept talking to him and talking to Susan instead of going out and finding the fake carjacker. But obviously now, with his ex-wife in jail for killing their sons, not allegedly, the gavel went down, he's talking to FBI trainees saying, don't ever shy away from asking these questions of the parents. Never.
For the first time, though, their teacher is the man who lived through it all, the boy's father, David Smith.
Please, as law enforcement, don't shy away. Don't feel intimidated by the parents and hinder, the investigation. Please ask those important questions.
Smith reopened his old wounds, talking about what it was like to be under the microscope.
Part of me was kind of a little frustrated because I wanted every available officer out there looking for Michael and Alex. And I was like, well, you're wasting time interviewing me. Or, as I thought at that time too, Susan.
He says what happened.
Is that not such a powerful statement? He's talking to FBI trainees. He's doing these classes. Talk about giving back. I kept saying, you're wasting time talking to me. And like he said, and at that time, I thought, and you're wasting your time talking to Susan. However, they were already on the right track.
Happened to his family is the reason why investigators can never back down. But he says to get to the truth, they'll have to use compassion.
Asking me, do I know where Michael and Alex is at? That hurt. But I knew they had to, ask that. They had to do their job. And that's what I want law enforcement to do, is just remember that they have to ask those tough questions.
David says he's only spoken to Susan once since the trial.
It took many years. It took a long time, but I finally forgiven her, because not forgiving her, that was eating me up.
As for Oprah's request for a sit-down with Susan in jail,
to me, she just needs to go away, per se. So, if Oprah wants to talk to Susan, I guess, from a media point of view, I can understand that. But from...
Okay, I forgot about this. I totally forgot about when this was going on. That David Smith, he had been on the Oprah show, and then he found out Oprah was trying to talk to Susan. He kind of felt stabbed in the back. How would you feel? Because he said Susan just needs to go away. I think about Al Stout, because there are some channels that are digging up phone conversations of Letitia's, writing her letters. They keep talking about Gannon's case. It is important to do every now and then. But just like David Smith, Al Stout said, I just want her to go away. We want to start healing as best we can. Pam Davidson said law enforcement has to start close to home and work out. That's what it is. Yep. Sarah, she said, then we have these other parents who don't care if law enforcement is looking for their kids or not. This is true. This is very true. But he said, I just want her to go away.
That was eating me up.
as for Oprah's request for a sit-down with Susan in jail,
to me, she just needs to go away, per se. So, if Oprah wants to talk to Susan, I guess, you know, from a media point of view, I can understand that. But from a personal point, I don't agree with it.
David Smith now works in Spartanburg. He's remarried and has a 10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son who he says has helped him through all of this. Angela Rodriguez, WYFF News.
Well, the internet lives forever. Not that internet was really a thing at the time when this was going on. And he did another interview where he talked about his daughter and his son. And well, doesn't take too long to go click, 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 and learn that at one time they have older brothers that were killed. David Smith had to tell them that will never, ever happen to you. I couldn't imagine having that conversation. I couldn't imagine having that conversation with my children. All right, again, parole is coming up. Parole, parole, parole. Now then, we'll just take an unofficial poll. What do you think? Do you think she's going to get paroled? Or do you think they're going to let her out? Someday she will get out. Okay, she will someday. I don't think she deserves anything. But look what all she's getting. That one dude sold his house and has all this money waiting on her. She gets all kinds of stuff in jail. Having sex with guards. That one chick, Big Bertha, was with her all the time. Shoo-wee. I really hope she doesn't, but we know how it goes, my friends.
Welcome back to Court TV Live and opening statements in our spotlight this morning. Child killer Susan Smith, who's hoping her ex-husband won't block her upcoming parole. We got a very special guest doing everything he can to keep Susan behind bars. Now, Susan Smith was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison for the murders of her sons, Michael Alexander, back in 1994. Now, she told police that a black male had forced her out of her car and drove away with her 2 sons still inside.
Now, I remember when this was all over the news. This is when the mainstream media actually cared about crime and children. Okay, they don't now. And I remember thinking, I would hate to be a black man in South Carolina today because people were looking for a whooping to find those boys. She made it all up. She could have started a damn race riot. Investigators, particularly that lead agent from SLED, had to work fast because tensions were so high. Anyone that lived in South Carolina around that area, how high was the tension? Because I could feel it all the way in Oklahoma.
Now, the car was found in a lake and the boys inside. Of course, it turned out that there was no mystery man and that Susan Smith was the only person responsible for this. They're her beautiful boys there now. Now, Smith reportedly told relatives that she has spent enough time in prison and she feels like she should be released. What do you think about that? I want to welcome on the show a very special guest this morning. He was the solicitor for South Carolina's 16th Judicial District. You know him and love him for being one of our guest legal analysts, attorney Tommy Pope. Good to see you, friend. This case, it comes up a lot, as you know. You tried one of the most famous cases in the world of true crime. And now here we are. This woman is up for parole and she wants her husband's support. Tommy, what can you tell us about this? What is her husband David's position, if you know?
Listen, when this popped up and I saw it, I read an article, I believe it was New York Post, saying that she wants his support. OMG. I about fell out. You talk about nerve. Not only is he your ex, and hey, listen, some people get divorced and they can remain friends, but not people that are divorced because they left your sons in the bottom of the lake.
You know, David, during the 9 days she was claiming there was a carjacker, David stood by her side, even though she was telling him the boyfriend she was trying to get would probably want to come visit. And he was supportive of her up till the end. You know, there was a dual investigation with law enforcement. As you know, you always look at the family members in addition to looking for the carjacker. And so David's always been supportive, but when the truth came out, he was my rock when it came to seeking the death penalty, because ultimately, you know, it's difficult to seek the death penalty against a female. It's difficult in a small town. And ultimately, I sought the death penalty and she received life. But David's always been solid. He has not been vindictive. It's all about justice for Michael and Alex. And I respect that.
Mm-hmm. No, I know.
He wants the ultimate justice for his sons, for Michael and Alex. After all this time, there's not a day that goes by he doesn't think about his little boys. He doesn't. Kimberly Mann said no release without forced hysterectomy in 10 more years. You know, it's the real shits that guy she's been talking to in the jail, he has children. And she said, I think I would make a great stepmother. I'd let Candace Wells babysit my kids before Susan Smith. Seth the Welsh said he should take her fishing. Woo, buddy. It is pure audacity. It's offensive. It is offensive that she would even try to reach out to him and say, I need your support so I can get out.
No, you do, Tommy. Tommy, what are the odds that she goes free? What do you think?
You know, Julie, you've been in front of a lot of juries, and you never know what you think they're coming out with. And in certain extent, I think the probate parole board is similar in that, you know, they will take both sides. They will hear, you know, her behavior in prison has mostly been self-centered. She's had sex with guards, you know, all the things she's done. The flip side is she hadn't killed another inmate in prison or things of that nature. But I also think they'll look at the crime. For me, the most important is the sentence she received of life in 1995, the jury could not be told that life didn't mean life. In other words, they were told, take life in your plain and usual meaning. So even afterwards, the jurors were saying, she'll have to sit in prison, she'll be remorseful about Michael and Alex, and she'll be there the rest of her life. Well, the two fallacies are she's clearly worried about Susan and her sexual relationships or other relationships, not about Michael and Alex. And again, the jury didn't know she should be eligible. So
I think that is a grave injustice amongst many others that happen in our country, that jurors aren't fully aware as to what sentencing truly is. Okay? The death penalty would mean no parole, she's never getting out. Life in some states is 20 friggin' years. This was not explained to them. There was no life without parole. It was life or death penalty. And it just was, I think it's unfair that they you know, imagine how many of these jurors, knowing that she could be getting out in about a month, have to deal with that guilt.
It's not from a vindictive standpoint, I don't think, with David. It certainly isn't with me. It's from a justice standpoint.
Oh, absolutely, Tommy. Well said. Those beautiful children, Michael, as I understand it, was 3 years old at the time, and Alex only 14 months old when she killed them both. The pain that certainly her husband, David, has felt, I'm sure hasn't gotten any easier. And then now it's time, and she's trying to get him to support her. Tommy, based on what you saw in the interactions, does that surprise you that all these years later she would be so bold as to try to get his help here?
No, it doesn't surprise me. Again, certainly there've got to be mental health issues. You and I talk about this all the time. Anybody that takes a life, there's something going on. But, we used to say that Susan, one definition in DSM would be histrionic. She's either the victim or the princess. And, this whole thing to me was contrived. If she gives up the kids, she's a bad mother. But if the carjacker takes the kids, she's a victim and more worthy of Tom Finley, the paramour, the boyfriend, coming to rescue her. So
I absolutely love the way he explained that, because we hear diagnoses get thrown out all the time. Histrionic. Like what he just said. There's so many. We heard tons of them in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. The way he put it in a nutshell, she is histrionic, he said, because in her life, she's either the princess way up there on her ivory tower, or she's the victim. She's the victim. And in her mind, being the damsel in distress was going to make Tom Finley come running to her aid. It didn't work. Nope.
She put some thought into it of what ends were best for Susan. And I think that's consistently where she's lived her life and, what the reason she reaches out to David.
And look at this handsome attorney. Look at him right here. You recognize that guy? Our control room is loving seeing this video of you, Tommy. They're all watching it right now and said, draw Tommy's attention to who we have on the screen here. America fell in love with you. You did such a brilliant job on this case. This was not an easy one to try, Tommy. That had to have been really upsetting, advocating for those kids, wasn't it?
It was, of course, I've tried a lot of cases, but I was also just a few years into office, as you saw the child that was in the courtroom. I was 32 at the time. I had gotten elected when I was 30. And I always joked, said I was kind of the Doogie Howser of prosecutors, and suddenly I'm dealing with the biggest case that we'd certainly ever seen here. And it was the same time OJ was going on. And then you couple that with, again, I've seen a lot of horrible things in my law enforcement career. I think the combination of the media, the combination of Susan dragging it out for the 9 days, where everybody hoped and felt that perhaps we'll find this car, we'll find this carjacker, even though from a law enforcement standpoint, carjackers don't take children normally. But anyway, there was the hope, and then it was dashed when we found out she did it selfishly.
She sure did, and we see more selfishness now as she's trying to get out of prison, and we'll see what happens when it's time for her parole hearing. I know we'll have many more questions for you.
Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. She is not a victim, but she's going to play this up. Oh, she is. It just pisses me to no end that she would even try to get David Smith to help her. Like she really thinks David's going to show up to the parole hearing and be like, hey, look, all that fun, she's been having behind bars, let's forget about that. She seems to be sorry about what she did, and I don't think she'll do it again. Whoa. Wow. She's been sitting in jail for over 30 years. She didn't learn a damn thing, did she?
Who drowned her own toddlers 30 years ago is hoping to be freed soon. But her former husband, who is also the children's father, is vehemently opposed to her ever stepping foot out of a prison. That's right, you guessed it, we're talking about Susan Smith. We're recapping the horrific case that shocked the nation and what her upcoming parole hearing could look like with prison consultant Justin Paperny. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Milner. In 1994, Susan Smith shocked the nation when she intentionally left her car and drive with her 3-year-old son, Michael, and 14-month-old son, Alexander, still strapped in their car seats, and let the car drown in a South Carolina lake, killing both of her sons. Initially, Smith claimed a black man carjacked her and took off with her vehicle with her son still inside. And she painted a picture of herself as a worried mother, and she made pleas for her son's safe return.
One thing about the sled agent, what caught him on early, he's a cute old man. He really is. He said when she was giving the description of the fake man, figment of her imagination, that supposedly carjacked her, he said there was no identifying characteristics. Nothing. It was almost like she was describing a cartoon. So he knew right there something was wrong.
I would like to say to whoever has my children that they please bring them home to us where they belong.
But investigators doubted Smith's story and believe she murdered her young children. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy spoke with the prosecutor in the case, Tommy Pope, earlier this year for Law and Crime's Crime Fix. Pope referenced a time he knew something was off when Smith appeared to be delighted by the camera attention instead of worried about her sons.
You know, in a strange twist, and like you said, back then, you know, we didn't have all the different news sources we can, but she was drawn from the beginning to the opportunity and the attention of being on the media. I remember I had raw footage from Channel 7 out of Spartanburg that was the first people on the scene to the house she went to. They had called David to come to the scene, and they're about to do the video. The camera lights are off. That was back in the old days when you had a big boy like me carrying the cameras, and then you had the anchor person doing the work. Okay? So they, the anchor person says something to the effect. So David and Susan are standing in front of them ready for the camera. And she says, okay, you know, when the lights come on, then I'm going to ask you, you know, your name and then what happened, whatever. Right before the lights come on, Susan looks at David and kind of giggles like it's exciting, like they're going to be on TV. You know what I mean? And of course, poor David looks like a deer in the headlights. He looks like a guy who was just told your kids have been stolen. And so going through it, there were always kind of little instances, but I was going to say the media intensity, you know, because ultimately.
Okay, I don't mean to interrupt this man, but I'm going to have to. You know, throughout the years, whether it's been on Facebook, on the channel, whatever, when we have talked about parents' reactions to their child being missing, Summer Wells and Sebastian are good examples because people are like, well, you don't know how you would act. You don't know how you would act. Everybody's just different. Everybody's just different. That's just how Don talks. That's just how Candace talks. That's just how they are. But right there, you have prosecutors, you have SLED agents, you have, FBI and everybody going, her reactions are not what we would expect to see for a missing mother. Sorry, a mother of missing children. We spoke about it yesterday with Jen Soto, 2 days in a row, when that detective was in her face going, your daughter has been murdered. Your daughter has been raped. And your reaction is null and void. So people's reactions to tragedy are extremely important. I see a couple people have brought up Diane Downs. That's going to be our next Throwback Thursday. Because Wist, she said, same with Diane Downs, who made up a bushy-haired stranger. I've said it once, I'll say it again. It's like these hoes have a textbook that they pass around between each other and go, well, that didn't work for her, so I'm going to twist the recipe a little bit. Maybe it'll work for me. And yeah, Diane Downs is up for damn parole too. She's going to be our next Throwback Thursday.
She was on every national media, you know, interviewed like the Today Show and all this stuff. And she was fine when she was getting the accolades and the sympathy. When they started questioning her a little bit, she started, you know, cracking. And so I think that media pressure helped. And then there were just slowly inconsistencies. The other thing is law enforcement always runs a dual investigation. If you tell me an alien took your child, then I'm going to go work on the alien case too, but I'm also going to check the logical things like family members. And so sometimes people say that's offensive, but you have to check out the victim's family too, to kind of check that off the list. Fortunately, they kept that working, and ultimately it proved they were looking in the right spot.
Stories like this one are obviously tough, but they're important to tell. And part of the reason we're able to do so is from our great sponsors like Upside. So what's Upside? It's a free app, yes, free.
Oh, shit.
The prosecution argued Susan Smith wanted to get rid of her son so she could continue an affair and start a new life with a former lover who didn't want children. However, the defense argued Smith had mental health issues and drove to the edge of the lake to kill herself and her two sons, but her body willed itself out of the car. It didn't take long for a jury to convict Smith, only 2 hours of deliberations. After her conviction, the prosecution argued in favor of the death penalty, but the jury decided on life in prison with the possibility of parole in 30 years, bringing us to this year in 2024. We're just months away from her parole hearing, and Susan Smith is fighting for her chance to be free again. But for Susan Smith, the freedom that she's seeking might not happen, especially if her former husband has a say. According to the New York Post, Smith reached out to her ex, begging him not to oppose her bid for release. But a family member of David Smith told the Post he 100% opposes her release from prison.
The nerve. The nerve. She reached out to the New York Post. I swear, her and Leilani Simon have New York Post on speed dial. Wanted them to reach out to David and get his support. Wow. Wow.
The relative said, quote, he has every right to stand in her way. And that's
okay, I'm going to read this. I don't know who the relative is, but they're right on. He has every right to stand in her way, and that's exactly what he's about to do. She killed his kids. She caused him a lifetime of heartbreak. Now, she's been getting her groove on, okay? She's been eating her beefaroni. She's had a lot of boom chicka wow wow in the cell. She killed these kids. Caused him a lifetime of heartbreak. If she thinks he's going to just stand by while she tries to get out of jail, she's even more delusional than we ever thought.
Exactly what he's about to do. She killed his kids, causing him a lifetime of heartbreak. If she thinks he's going to stand by while she tries to get out of jail, she's even more delusional than we even thought. But even after Susan Smith was convicted, she didn't clean up her act. She was caught using drugs and having sex with prison guards. In 2000, Smith was written up for having sex 4 times with a 50-year-old prison guard, Houston Cagle. He pled guilty and spent time behind bars himself when he was sentenced to 3 months in jail. Then in 2000,
she did. And that guy went on Dr. Oz and was talking about it. Yeah. She was sleeping with him. He got in criminal trouble. He lost his job and all the benefits that come with it. And on top of that, she gave him the herpes. Okay. I have to abbreviate because I'm on YouTube, but she gave him the herpes.
2001, Captain Alfred Rowe Jr. also pled guilty and was sentenced to 5 years of probation. Both men also lost their jobs. Prison officials say Smith has stayed out of trouble since 2015. Instead, family members say Smith has kept busy making plans on what she'll do if she's released on parole. But with her former husband opposing her release and her prior infractions, how possible is it that the killer mom could actually be granted parole? We're breaking that down with prison consultant Justin Paperny. Justin, welcome. I think a lot of people might be shocked that Susan Smith is actually up for parole this year in just a few months. And this case truly shocked the nation. How likely is it that she could actually be released on parole?
I would say it's unlikelier because she hasn't built a record through the last 30 years in prison that would demonstrate why she's even a candidate. It's one thing to say, I think I want to go home, I've earned it. It's another to have actually built a record over the last 30 years that she could actually rely on. Because to me, at least, it doesn't appear as if she's done that work that could influence a parole board. I would say it's very unlikely she succeeds. And I know that's to the happiness of her ex-husband.
And that brings me to my next question. Her former husband.
Okay, so he's saying, I think it's unlikely that she'll get paroled. You know, there's lots of experts on the internet. We see them every day. A lot of people are saying just because she didn't get an education back there doesn't mean that they're going to continue to house her. I wouldn't want her out. No way. But we know how these things go. We've seen it before.
Husband David Smith is very against her ever getting out of prison for what she did to their sons. How much of his say will actually go into account for the parole board?
The victim's statement is probably the most significant, and you could argue that he might have been a little bit more sympathetic if she had built a record over a sustained period of time. We interview federal and state judges, and you hear from judges or parole boards, what does it take to succeed? Get out of prison early, get probation or parole. The prisoner has to build a record that shows what have they learned? Why would this never happen again? The devastation you've done to other people, how you will be law-abiding if you get released. A crime like this may never lead to a release, but at least she could have shown that she is a candidate, even though the husband would oppose it. But his statement, it is a big deal, and it's the biggest reason she most likely gets denied now and for the rest of her life.
And the opposition from her husband, as well as the past infractions she got for using drugs, having sex with prison guards, that coupled with her ex-husband not wanting her to be released. Is there really anything that's working in her favor?
Zero, other than she's served 30 years thus far, and calendar pages have turned, and she's 30 years removed from her crime. It is a shame when people think they have earned an early release, yet there's no evidence that demonstrates why they're worthy of an earlier release. Her behavior in prison, the infractions, sleeping with guards, if anything shows she doesn't get it, she is incapable of making good decisions. And a parole board is simply going to ask a question. Has she done anything to demonstrate that she would be law-abiding on the other side? Unlikely if she can't follow the rules inside of a controlled prison environment. No chance.
And do you think Susan Smith ever really changed? During her trial, prosecutors said she killed Michael and Alexander because she didn't want to be a mom. She doesn't seem to show any remorse for what she had done. And since being locked up, there's been this pattern of Susan Smith seemingly having a trail of men in her pathway. What are your thoughts?
She's done very little to demonstrate that she's changed, that she's worthy or have earned a second chance. What she is doing is what some people in prison who have to happy talk, cliches. I've served 30 years. I think I've earned another chance. Please don't get in the way of my parole. Words mean absolutely nothing. Has any record been built that demonstrates why she's a candidate for parole? Of course not. And of course, she will continue to play the victim when it's denied. People are against me, my ex-husband and others. It's not fair. That's one way to serve time. It makes you feel better, but all it really does is get in the way of fully accepting responsibility and acknowledging and sharing and owning that she destroyed lives. And until she can acknowledge that, more misery to come for her and others she continues to hurt.
And that hearing is just a few months away in November. What could her parole hearing actually look like?
Well, I presume most people who actually want parole, we have a nonprofit, for example, that does work in every California prison. And people who are trying to qualify for an early release, they demonstrate through their own efforts how they got to prison, what have they learned, if they're engaged in programming, how is the programming helping them, if they're...
She didn't learn shit. She hasn't opened even one school book. She's been given the herps to prison guards, getting down with Big Bertha, manipulating people out of their money via phone calls we have heard. Mermaid said if the father of those babies says, please don't let her out, then they should honor him. He suffered greatly due to her horrific crime. Horrific. Beyond imaginable. They should honor his wishes. his victim's impact statement that he will be giving in about a month is going to weigh heavily. Guess who in that room is going to give the least shits? Susan Smith.
They're reading literature. Why? How will the work in prison help them become a law-abiding citizen after their release? She hasn't done that. So you can't expect her to start that over the next 3 months. You'll probably have some lawyer, some advocate expressing why she's a candidate for release. She's served 30 years. But you're only successful if the prisoner has built a record that shows, and from what I've read and heard, she's had 30 years to build that record. And instead of doing it positively and growing it and documenting what she's learned, she's continued on this path of bad decision-making. It's why the parole board denying her, in my opinion, will be a formality now and for the foreseeable future. She hasn't earned it.
Now, say Susan Smith's parole is denied. Would she have another opportunity to go to the parole board? And if so, how long would that be?
I don't know the exact length of time, but I presume it could be 5, 10 years, depending on South Carolina and however long it takes. I know if she is denied, it's probably an opportunity for her, if she has some ability to introspect, to say, okay, why did they deny me? What led me here? What could I do in advance of the next parole hearing to say, I heard why you denied me. I understand why. Here's a record I've begun to build that demonstrates why I am now a candidate. In fact, I wish I had done this for the first 30 years. Now I've done it for the next 5 or 10. The problem with that is it actually takes work. It actually takes acceptance of responsibility, introspection, avoiding problems, avoiding sleeping with staff, avoiding complaining. It actually takes work, and not everyone is willing to do the work. And until she does that, more problems are coming.
Now, say by chance Susan Smith, takes accountability for what she did. She shows remorse while at the parole hearing. Do you think her showing maybe some last minute remorse might actually have a sway on the parole board?
That's why we interview judges. The answer is, of course not. It's happy talk. It's one thing to say, I'm sorry, I accept responsibility, which judges or a parole board, they expect to hear that. It is discounted. Here's what they will say. Where is the evidence behind the remorse? Where is the evidence that you have changed? Where is the evidence that you have learned from this experience? Where is the evidence that you identify with the victims and families and lives you have destroyed forever? She could say she's sorry. It will have zero significance because she has not built a record that proves that she is truly sorry. It's nothing more, as judges would tell you, nothing more than happy talk.
And do you think that Susan Smith might be delusional in a way to think that she actually could step foot out of a prison in a few months?
Look, hope is a good thing, right? You can convince yourself in that isolated environment that relief is possible, that someone on that parole board will have sympathy for her, that perhaps her life has changed over the last 30 years. So certainly hope is a good thing. But if you haven't built a record, there's no reason to be hopeful. You're simply delusional. And that's exactly what we have here. She should only have some hope if she had a documented record of growth, productivity, lessons learned, and building a record that shows why she's a candidate, even if it's a small percentage. That's when you have hope. If you haven't done the work, you're simply delusional.
Do you think that if she doesn't get out of prison, that she may in a way just say, you know what, forget it, this is all a waste, like I'm not going to go up for my next parole hearing, time after time after time again? She just might sit with what she did and stay the rest of her life in prison. Do you think that's also a possibility?
Sure. Some people convince themselves that I've done everything I could and they didn't reward it. So why would I continue to do it if they're not going to reward it? It's kind of this ends justify the means, so fixated on an end, and they're only doing it because of the result they want rather than doing it for the right reasons. And until she begins to do it for the right reasons over a sustained period of time, she will continue to get denied parole. She will continue to play the victim and blame other people. So sure, there's a chance she gives up, says that's a wrap, nothing I do matters. I would ask her, what actually have you done? What have you documented? What have you proven over the last 3 years that demonstrates why you are a candidate for parole? And that's a tough one because it requires people to introspect. And if they can own it and finally say, I haven't done a damn thing, hence the reason she has more struggle coming.
And Justin, this is really just a shocking case that had happened, again, 30 years ago. But take me back to the 90s where you may have heard of this case. What was your mind and what was just the general sentiment?
Goodness. Can you rehab someone like her? Can you? Look at that car. Look at that car. They're bringing it out. I'm not saying screenshot it and blow it up. You can see those little boys in the back seat, strapped in. They need to put this picture in front of the parole board. The picture I saw of the other side, one of the babies had his hand to the window. Show them the picture of the little hand.
Across the nation about what Susan Smith did and was later convicted of.
Well, when you hear about it, it's tragic. And initially, I was only 19 then, and I immediately had huge sympathy for the family because she pinned it on, I think, African Americans who she said kidnapped them. So it takes waste police resources investigating people who might have committed this crime. So you immediately have sympathy, like, my God, this family lost their two beautiful young children. This is awful. But it just continues to show her criminal thinking, how she was strategizing to try to pin this on other people. So I recall reading it, my initial sympathy went to the parents, and then when it was clear that she did it, it went, of course, to the father and the young children who were killed. I remember reading it vividly. I was a student at USC, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah, it was truly just a heartbreaking case. Justin, thank you so much, really, for being here. We really appreciate your time. Before we sign you off, is there anything else about this case you would like to add?
If you have someone in prison and they want to get out earlier, and they are truly committed to making amends, it's got to be documented. You got to build it. You got to show progress for a cynical judge or a cynical parole board who expects you to say, I'm sorry, let me out. If you haven't built and documented, it's not going to happen. Do the work and convey to cynical stakeholders why you're a candidate for leniency. Without that, expect to stay in prison longer.
All right, Justin.
I say she needs to stay in there till they take her out in a casket. Okay? That's what I'm saying. She made a conscious decision. Look what Paper Slut said. It's crazy. Everybody wakes up with a list on their minds, okay? And sometimes that list gets thrown to the wayside and it's like, yeah, it's just going to be a lazy day. I'm like that on Sundays. It's all I can do to scrape myself off the couch. But like Paper Slut said, every day, we wake up with some sort of running list in our head. Need to cut the grass. Oop, I better, look at my email because I probably need to pay the electric bill. Uh-oh, it's the water due. Ah, shit, I didn't check the mail. I got to do this. I got to do that. She woke up that day and said, I'm going to kill my kids. I'm going to kill my kids. Yes, V. Oakley. She said, oh my God, is that the boys in the back of the car? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. There's one picture I saw, and I just don't even have it in me to put it up. But you see a little tiny hand on that window. A little tiny hand. That's what the parole board needs to see. I couldn't imagine. There's no way I can wrap my mind around it. No way. No. All right, David Smith is biting back. He is biting back. He gave an interview, and he flat out said he's going to fight this tooth and nail.
This morning, we're spotlighting new reaction to Susan Smith's upcoming parole eligibility. The convicted killer became infamous after drowning her two young sons and then trying to mislead the public into thinking that they had been kidnapped. Her husband at the time, David Smith, was by her side supporting her until she confessed. Now, David has been quiet for years about the case, but he recently gave us an exclusive interview talking about her upcoming parole hearing and how he's doing today.
I don't think I'm any more of a suspect than anyone in this case right now.
It's very painful to know that anyone would think that either of us had anything to do with this abduction of our children.
Does that not just break your heart? Talk about a time capsule. They were on the Today Show. She goes, I'm no more of a suspect. I'm than anybody else. He goes, it's heartbreaking to think that anyone would think either of us had anything to do with this.
Today.
I don't think I'm any more of a suspect than anyone in this case right now.
It's very painful to know that anyone would think that either of us had anything to do with this abduction of our children.
David, how do you feel about Susan wanting you to advocate for her prison release?
I think it's absurd. I can't comprehend that she even thinks that I would advocate for her.
When was the last time you talked to her?
It was about a month after she confessed and was arrested. I saw her at a prison in Colombia where she was being held at the time.
Mm-hmm. Has she tried to contact you then, since then, rather?
No, I've had no contact with Susan since that one time. We spoke for about an hour that day, and I haven't talked to her since.
David, do you plan to attend her parole hearing?
I absolutely do. I'm for sure going to be there.
Would you give us a little bit of a preview of what you plan?
All right. Her being, I'm going to say, a narcissist. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and throw that out. Her being, as I said, histrionic. You know, she's either got to be the victim. Oh, look what has happened to me. Look what's happened to me. Look what's happened to me. Oh my God, this is horrible. Or she's the queen. I run this shit. What do you think her reaction is going to be when she's once again reminded of what she did? And David walks in to talk about what his life has been like the last 30 plus years, what he's gone through, how old his sons would be today. They'd be married, they'd have jobs. David could be a granddaddy now. Is she a narcissist or is she a psychopath? Pam Davidson. She said narcissist is too generous. Psychopath, I think. I have to say I agree with you.
Drive a narcissistic person in a relationship are power, control, and domination. And the narcissistic person uses the relationship as a source of validation. If those needs are not being met or cannot be achieved, that is a contributor to the volatility of these relationships.
The volatility of these relationships.
To tell the board?
You know, at this time, I don't even know if I'm going to even write something formally on paper. I may just speak from the heart, but I just want them to know or remind them of what she did. Who were the victims in this case? Certainly not her. And to let them know that her only doing 30 years.
Okay, I'm interrupting again, okay? Who are the victims in this crime? I like how he said that. It's certainly not her. It's certainly not her. Well, I know who's not a victim. Lil's not. You know why? Because she just got gifted a Crime Lines and Lies membership. Right or crime from our girl Pat.
Would be an injustice to Michael and Alex. She doesn't deserve to ever be free again.
David, would you tell us a little bit about your beautiful boys, Michael and Alex?
Well, Julie, unfortunately, I still do not have a lot of memories of Michael and Alex. Early on, I sought professional help, and all of them told me the same thing, that eventually the memories would come back. But at the time, it was my own system taking care of me and not letting me have any memories of them. It was protecting me. Well, here it is almost 30 years, and those memories haven't come back yet. I have bits and pieces, like giving them bath time with them and playing in the yard a little bit. And like Michael used to ride on the lawnmower with me, cutting grass, and he'd always go to sleep. So I have some snippets, snapshots of memory, but I don't have very many, unfortunately.
I want to say,
has anybody ever had a very, not to bring it back up, Kimberly Mann, our everyday birthday girl, gifted 5 Crime Lines and Lies memberships? Let's see who got them. Alley Cat, Debbie, another Debbie, HCM, Colette. Anybody ever had anything like so traumatic happen in your life? And I don't mean on this scale, okay? And I'm not trying to scratch the scab. That you can't really piece together the memories. Because, our brains, believe it or not, protect us from things. Like if you have a car wreck, the adrenaline goes crazy. So the pain isn't exactly what it would be. So when you hear him say, I have some memories, they're there somewhere, but they're not all totally there. That is totally, in my opinion, trauma, PTSD. Angel P said, no Connies? I know. I don't know what the hell's going on here. The hell? We got Debbie's today.
hey, to my babies, your mama loves you so much.
David, how do you feel now about the cruel way in which Susan lied to you then?
After a lot of thinking and soul searching, I wish I had seen what other people were seeing at the time. But I just wanted to get Michael and Alex back. That was my main concern.
Tell us, have you forgiven Susan? And if so, why?
Yes, I've forgiven her. And again, that goes to my faith in God, and that's the way I was raised, that we have to forgive. But it sure doesn't take away the act of what she did.
Could you forgive her? And in no way, shape, or form am I pointing a finger at David going, you shouldn't forgive her, you shouldn't forgive her. Some victims of crime. One, let's talk about Corey Mikolo. His grandmother was on here and said, I will never forgive Christopher Greger. Whereas other people in other crimes, they're like, listen, it was eating me alive. I had to do a lot of soul searching, attend every church that was open, read every book I could get a hold of, every book, anything I could do, because it was eating me alive. And you guys are really opening up in here. Again, I didn't mean to scratch the scab, but like Seth the Welsh, he said, I'm remarried, but my wife died from cancer. It feels like another life I led. Our brains protect us. This is not anywhere on Seth's scale. I'm certainly not going to have a pissing contest about trauma. When my son got dropped off at, for the Air Force, I don't remember the drive to Tulsa. I don't remember him getting on the bus. I don't remember the drive back home. I don't remember. I've seen pictures. I don't remember him calling and giving me his address at the base. I don't remember any of that. All of it blocked.
It doesn't make it any less. It doesn't make it any easier. But I have forgiven her for what she did.
Tell us, if Susan were here listening to this interview, what message would you have for her?
I would just tell her that you have no idea of how much damage you have done to so many people. I would tell her that in my capabilities, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you stay behind bars.
This court stands adjourned.
I want to bring in the man who put away Susan Smith, attorney Tommy Pope. Tommy, would you walk us, please, through the legal process? What's going to happen next in this quest for parole?
I think it's amazing that after all of these years, that Tommy Pope and David Smith are friends. They're not friends like pick up the phone. Hey, remember what, Susan did? They don't even talk about it. They've become actual friends. Hey, let's go fishing and grab a beer. Okay. They have been amazing support to each other.
So what's happened, and you and I have discussed this before, the jury didn't know that life didn't mean life, but now that there's been 30 years, because they did find the aggravating circumstances of killing two underage children, killing two or more at one time. So she's now eligible. There'll be a hearing probably October. David and I are still trying to coordinate with Solicitor Brackett on the dates and, all of that. And then basically it's kind of a mini hearing. They hear aggravation and mitigation. They'll hear, what David's got to say. I want to tell them how the jury believed that she was going to serve the rest of her natural life. I'm with David. We knew it was going to be an uphill battle, particularly with the union jury, but we try to respect their decision. We just wish they'd been armed with all the knowledge, because I remember jurors saying, she would sit and think about Michael and Alex, where her conduct's proven she hadn't done that. And she's been more worried, and I don't think I misspeaking here in front of David, she's always been more worried about Susan than she is anybody else.
Well, he would know. This case changed his life too. We spoke about it yesterday in the Jen Soto interrogation, when the detective that was in her face said, you're going to go home. You're going to go home and sleep. I'm not going home. I can't see my children. I'm going to be here the rest of the day. I'm going to be here all night. I'm going to be here through the weekend, because I'm working on justice for your daughter. And sometimes we forget in these cases, and don't get me wrong, there's some shitty ones out there. There are some shitty ones out there. But at the end of the day, their parents, their grandparents, aunts, uncles, and these cases affect them greatly too. This case changed Tommy Pope's life. And it goes without saying, David's.
And that's been the case throughout.
Right, Tommy. And she has had a pretty bad prison record, as far as I'm aware, hasn't she, Tommy, with misconduct with guards, and I believe drug use has also been reported. Is that correct?
She has had, I think, like we discussed before, I've seen much worse. I've seen them killing people in prison, but her behavior tells us that contrary to what that jury was thinking, which was you'll be remorseful, you'll think about Michael and Alex, Susan thinks about how things affect Susan.
Whoever has them, I pray every day that you're taking care of them, and know that we will do anything we will to help you to get them home back to us.
And David, I want to ask you now about what your life is like. I understand you have your wife, Tiffany, with you that you'd like to introduce to us. Would you bring her in, please?
Okay. His wife, not his ex, his wife, Tiffany, is a rock star. The way she has supported him, loved him, done everything she can to try to normalize their life. She is an amazing woman because, no offense to David, could you imagine signing up for that? This man is asked for interviews all the time. Talk show. Just letting you know we're going to be going live to talk about your sons. She's living the hell too. And she has been such a rock for him.
I sure will. This is Tiffany, my wife.
And you have children together, right?
We do. We have a daughter together, and then I have a son by someone else.
Our daughter is 23, so we have the empty nest going on. So we spend a lot of time, just work, and then we come home and he cooks supper. He does a lot of the cooking. He helps me out a lot. I would try and push him to get out of bed and go do things, and he just wanted to sleep a lot. I call those the dark years.
I'm very happy for him, and she has stuck by him. Now, I'm sure you caught that, where they say they have a daughter together that's 23, and he has a son from someone else. No judgment here. No. He did. He strayed because he has trust issues with women. Now, that's not Tiffany's fault. That's really not anyone except for Susan Smith. Do you blame him for not being able to trust, especially when children are involved? But she stuck by his side. They got very active, therapy, church, work, and everything, and worked through all of it. Like she said, there was dark days where he didn't get out of bed.
Wife.
And you have children together, right?
We do. We have a daughter together, and then I have a son by someone else.
Our daughter is 23, so we have the empty nest going on. So we spend a lot of time, just work, and then we come home and he cooks supper. He does a lot of the cooking. He helps me out a lot. I would try and push him to get out of bed and go do things, and he just wanted to sleep a lot. I call those the dark years. But I just over the years, I would try to push him to do things to try to get his spirits up and get him out of the house, or just to do different things. And then as the years have gone by, things have gotten easier, and he doesn't have as many dark days anymore. So it's life is really good.
And I want to thank David and Tiffany Smith and attorney Tommy Pope. And you can watch even more of that interview. My full uncut conversation with David Smith and his wife will be posted to.
I watched it and there wasn't really much more on there. Well, I did see a comment in here that said, I hope Michael and Alex haunt Susan every day. There have been a lot of stories about actual hauntings at that lake. Now, I don't know if y'all believe in this stuff. I don't know. And of course, this nice man you're getting ready to hear, he's just telling the story. Even, what's his name? Lamont. He went out there. He saw the tombstones and everything like that. And he just said it's a strange, very eerie feeling that you get when you're there. I do believe it. I do. I have to be careful about the way I say it because I'm going to get people, in comments on the replay. By the way, if you're catching this on the replay, say hi. Leave me a comment. But I don't want anybody going, oh, Brooks is out there saying Michael and Alex are little demons now. That's not what I'm saying. Just listen to what this man reports.
Hey, y'all, I'm Carolina Tony. Thank you for stopping by my channel. Today, the road brings us to Union, South Carolina, and we are here on the banks of John D. Long Lake, where on October the 25th, 1994, Susan Smith killed 2 of her sons. And also, this lake has claimed the lives of many others. And we will tell you the stories right after the station identification.
Carolina Tony looks like an awesome dude to me. Subscribe to Carolina Tony.
Susan Vaughn Smith was born September 26, 1971 in Union, South Carolina. She was a fairly good student in high school, well liked, but there was a dark side to her that a lot of people didn't know. There were incidents in her home life where a stepfather had tried to have relations with her several times. She had tried to commit suicide on more than one occasion. Living in a failed marriage, on the brink of divorce, having an affair with a married man that was her boss. On the day before this tragedy, he sent her a letter telling her that it had to end, that nice girls did not have affairs with married men. Susan returned home and told everyone that a black man with a gun had jumped in the car. On July 22nd, 19...
Jumped in the car. Took the car. But the sled agent caught on real quick because her description of said man didn't make sense. Didn't make sense at all. Also, the light that she said that she was carjacked at was not red. Couldn't have been. Also, when she got to the house to call for help, her pants were wet up to about like mid-shin. Now later she said it's because she tried to get in the lake and save the boys. Well, she didn't try too hard. Sounds to me like she was pushing that car. I don't think she tried to get her ass in there to save them. At all. Her pants got wet because she was pushing that car, giving it a shove into the lake.
1995, Susan Smith was sentenced to life in prison for murdering her two sons, Michael Daniel Smith, age 3, and 14-month-old Alexander Tyler Smith. But the story doesn't end here, because this lake took more lives.
Right in this spot here, a tree was planted in memorial for her two boys. Let me read it to you. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me. Matthew 18:4-6. This tree was planted in memory of Michael and Alex Smith. Their innocent souls touched our hearts in many ways as the light of God's Son touches this tree. Dedicated December the 3rd, 1994, by Glenn and Colleen Outlaw of Jacksonville, Florida, in cooperation with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. This tree was provided by Lewis Nursery and Tree Farm. This plaque provided by Gross Monuments, Orange Park, Florida. I think the tree has died or been removed, but the plaque is here forever. Not long after the two children drowned in the lake, it brought on media attention from all over the United States, and lots of folks would come here to look at the monuments. The monuments were originally planted right here on this concrete base.
Okay, he's going to explain in a minute why they had to move the monuments. The Lady Lexi, the boys would have been screaming for help too. And this is as she's walking away, listening to their screams. Oh my God. Is there a room hot enough in hell for these people?
The road that went to the boat ramp came in from where we just walked from, would come by here, and then the ramp to the lake was straight down that way. Come with me, I'll show you. Now, because of the letter that Susan got, she was real distraught. She had planned on killing her two children as well as herself. So she got in her car, put it in neutral, with her two children strapped in the back seat. And as it started rolling down the ramp, Susan decided she wouldn't kill herself. She got out of the car, and the car went down the ramp. And this is a pretty steep hill, and you can tell it probably picked up a lot. It went out into the lake. Now, Susan confessed to the murders 9 days after it had happened on national TV. And during those 9 days, there were actually people that came here and searched the lake, but they didn't find anything. But she told about how far the car went out, and that's where the divers were able to recover the bodies of the two little boys. One of the divers said that the children were still strapped in the back of the car, and one of them's hand was up against the window when they brought it to the surface. Okay, as I've said earlier, the monuments were once right there on that concrete pad. They've since been removed, and I'm going to tell you why. On October the 31st, 1996, a group of 10 people, adults as well as children, came late at night to look at the monuments. They parked the car so that the headlights were shining on the monument so they could see them. 4 people got out of the car to look at the monument. While that was happening, the car rolled down the hill, past the boat ramp, and into the water. This is where it really gets creepy, guys. Some of the folks that was out of the car, they tried to get in the water to save them. Some of them died as well. Out of the 10 people, 7 wound up drowning. When they recovered the bodies from the car, when they brought it up out of the water, the adult, the father of the children, was still behind the wheel of the car with the car in park.
Imagine that. They've had many suspicious drownings out there. No foul play, just shit that didn't make sense. They pull the car out of the water and it's still in park. People hear voices at that lake. There's no camping for a lot of people out there.
Where it really gets creepy, guys. Some of the folks that was out of the car, they tried to get in the water to save them. Some of them died as well. Out of the 10 people, 7 wound up drowning. When they recovered the bodies from the car, when they brought it up out of the water, the adult, the father of the children, was still behind the wheel of the car with the car in park. Hey, they say this lake is haunted, and that sometimes late at night that you can see orbs of light along the dam moving around. And is it the children looking for somebody to play with? I don't know, but it's amazing. As I said, since the deaths, the monument has been moved. As you can see, at the foot of the hill is a lake. This is about 100 yards from where the monuments originally were. They now have been moved up the road to here. I guess we do not need any more deaths by accident. So in order to view the monuments is actually along beside the little road that comes down in here to the lake. There are 2 monuments. These are the 2 monuments that the Suburban actually passed through when it rolled into the water. In memory of Michael Daniel, October the 10th, 1991, and Alexander Tyler, August the 5th, 1993.
Oh my gosh, they would be in their 30s. Probably married, probably working, maybe served in the military, maybe have gone to college. GB, thank you for gifting a Crime Lines and Lies membership. We have to keep umbrellas around here all the time, don't we?
They both passed away on October the 25th, 94. And this is what they look like shortly before.
Look at that. And their daddy visits those monuments often. He said over and over and over, I would have taken my sons in a heartbeat. I wouldn't have thought twice about it. I begged for them. I begged for my sons. But some people honestly say that Susan Smith can be rehabbed. She's done her time, some people say.
The tragic death. Several miles on the outskirts of Union, South Carolina, we traveled to Bogensville United Methodist Church to search for the graves of the Smith children. Well, we have done some backtracking and exploring to find the grave of Michael Daniel and Alexander Tyler. This is where they're laid to rest. They died together, and they're buried together in the same coffin. See where people have come and left little toys around their gravestone. Such a tragedy that this lake has claimed the lives of so many people. I want to thank you for joining me. Again, if you hadn't subscribed yet, be sure to go down below and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give me a big old thumbs up. But until next time, y'all have a good day.
I'm going to put Carolina Tony's link in there because I think he is a cool dude. I'd like to go fishing with that dude. I think him and my husband would be great friends. Well, guys, this has been another great show, another hard show. Probably going to walk away from this show pissed off again, kind of like yesterday and the day before and the day before, because if they seriously parole her in November, I'm not saying that she's going to be unsafe on the streets, that she's just going to start knocking off kids or anything. I'm not saying that. But the trauma it is going to cause to David Smith, I think that needs to really be looked at by the parole board. We heard his wife in that interview saying, you know, he has some really dark days. He can't get out of bed. Nobody can blame him for that. Her out living her best life with whatever dude she digs up to take care of her I think is going to set him back. Just keep her in there until it's time for the body bag. Okay? That's just my opinion. That's how it goes. All right, guys, we have another show in about 2 hours. Am I going to see you back here in 2 hours? Because old goofy Sarah Boone is back in court today. Oh, she is. She is. She has got a legal team. She's going for battered woman syndrome. Woo! Woo! Hit that like. Thank the mod squad. I thank you. And I will see you back here in about 2 hours. Love you lots. See ya soon.